In those days, people used to make paper aeroplanes out of your visa, and literally, whoever was sponsoring you, they would make a paper aeroplane and fly it from the balcony. I arrived in March of 1976. In those days, people used to make paper aeroplanes out of your visa, and literally, whoever was sponsoring you, they would make a paper aeroplane and fly it from the balcony. And you had to catch it downstairs because you had to come in with it, but it had to be, can you imagine that? I mean, it was just an amazing thing. I arrived here and there was sunshine and smiles, people with, I don't know, just a spirit. There was this wonderful feeling of something happening. Everybody who arrived here in those days became part of it. You were part of this incredibly exciting, evolving story. And you really did feel as though, you had a part to play. It was incredibly good fun. I just was captivated by these buildings. There was just something so right about them. They had they really grew out of the sand. There was a couple of absolutely delightful gentlemen, the Falknars brothers, and they were tea importers. I used to sit with them and chat and talk about things, and people had time for each other in those days. There was an awful lot more interaction between the various kind of communities and the jobs and the things that people were doing. So I said to them, I've fallen in love with these buildings. One day when I went past, they said, "We found you a house." And I said, "Well, that's just wonderful. But," I said, "I know the kind of rents that the houses are, and it was way beyond." And at that stage, I was, my husband hadn't joined me, and I said, "But," they said, no, for you, the rent is different. You're having a local rent." So they negotiated for me to have this house. We moved in here in 1978 with a 6-month-old baby. And it became home. 1979, there was a knock on the door, and this lovely guy said, "You don't know me, but I've been told that you're a lady who likes art." And I said, "Well, I do. I love art." And he said, "Well, I'm a painter." And his name was Julian Barrow. I was later to find out that he was actually a very famous British painter. But he said he would love to show these paintings, and, did I think that we could do it together? And I said, "Well, why not?" So the big room where the wind tower is was our majlis. I said, "I'll tell you what, we'll put them up in our majlis." So we put it was about a month later, he came back in November of 1979. And he put we put the furniture in the garden, we put the paintings on the wall. And I just sat in the garden and handwrit invitations that I'd made with a little printer down the road, and I passed them out to friends and said, "Pass these on to your friends," and everybody turned up for a party, basically, to have a look at some really lovely paintings of Dubai, and I sold the lot. So I thought that was the beginning of the Majlis Gallery, and it was called the Majlis Gallery because the first exhibition I ever did was in my Majlis, and it just all evolved from there. It was a great, but as the city evolved, it was a very, very close-knit community in those days. Then we were aware one day of a big kind of rumble in the area, and there was dust everywhere. We went up on the roof, and all we could see over towards the mosque, where all of the big, big buildings were bulldozers. And they were demolishing a great sector of the old quarter. And we found out, to make way for the new ruler's office, which was much needed, we sort of thought, well, how long have we got here? And we only had another 18 months. And then we had an eviction order as well. And left here with, the children wept, I wept, everybody was kind of... and then about 4 months later, I had a phone call from my then landlord, who said, "Alison, I've got great news, you can move back." I just said to my husband, "Look, I'm sorry, I've got to try and do this." I want to make that house into a permanent gallery. On November the 2nd, 1989, we opened as the Majlis Gallery Limited Liability Company. And that was the beginning of another new era. People say to me, gosh, you've seen some changes. And I say, well, yeah, but and I was part of the changes, but they didn't happen overnight. And that spirit is still there. And that is what I hope Dubai hangs on to, is this wonderful open-mindedness to the possibilities that can make life better. At the same time, keeping their feet on the ground as to where they came from, because those old values, those Bedu values of caring for your neighbour, being open-hearted, that is, I think, so important to the core of Dubai as it goes forward. Yes, it's the most incredibly contemporary city now, but the underlying foundation of it was born from things that had got a lot of integrity.